history of this airfield and that of the Spitfire have been deeply entwined for many years in more recent times as well, with so many airworthy examples having been restored and based here. But let's take you back once again to the summer of 1938 and the revolution that was wrought in the Royal Air Force by the arrival of Supermarine's new creation. Gordon Sinclair had been a pre-war pilot with number 19 Squadron. He joined the unit in 1937 when it was still flying the Gloucester Gauntlet. Gordon Sinclair went on to claim 5 kills with number 19 Squadron during the Dunkirk evacuation and the Battle of Britain, and he was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. In an interview with an IWM researcher, he describes his first experiences of the Spitfire when it was delivered to number 19 Squadron in 1938.
A total change. Apart from anything else with 100 miles an hour change, and there was that, but it was a totally different sort of machine. I must confess I didn't terribly like the Spitfire to begin with, but then I had a reason not to. Because the first flight I ever did in one, I turned it upside down on the aerodrome landing, and I suppose it gave me an inborn fear of it. It took me quite a lot of hours to get over that. But a lot of people, like James Card, who were doing little Oswald crystals and things like that with the aerodrome, the first flight, it took me back like a night to water. But it was a wonderful aeroplane. There was no question about that. It looked right. But tactically, from the point of view of fighting, we didn't know any difference because we didn't know how to fight in a gauntlet. Nobody told us.
Squadron's early Spitfire pilots was Sergeant, later Wing Commander, George Unwin. He shot down 14 enemy aircraft by the end of 1940 and was presented with the Distinguished Flying Medal and Bar. Here, he describes the mission on the 26th of May 1940 when the Spitfire, leading the trio in front of us, N3200, was shot down.
That's when 19 Squadron. The squadron leader Stevenson, and they said they ran straight into a horde of Stukas, and they methodically followed fighter command attack number 1, and went in, and you went in at a very slow overtaking speed of the target, and they were very slow, Stukas, and these boys were creeping inside, when of course down came the message switch and shot down the first 3 straight away, the CO, Michael Lyon, and the pilot officer was killed.
The CO that George Unwin mentioned there was Squadron Leader Geoffrey Stevenson. It was the one and only combat mission for Spitfire N3200, which then lay on the beaches of Dunkirk, or near Dunkirk, where it had been downed for many decades until being recovered and eventually restored to flying condition. And very appropriately, the newest hangar up at the eastern end of the airfield, belonging to the Aircraft Restoration Company and Historic Flying, is named the Stevenson Hangar in his honour. Colin, as we watch these 3 aircraft, it's worth reflecting, isn't it, how obviously some of the differences are very obvious. We've got the classic elliptical wing on 2 of the aircraft. We've got the clipped wing for better low-altitude performance on the 3rd. There were different armament configurations, different engines, of course, but some of them are less visible.
They are, yes. When the Spitfire was first introduced, it had a wooden 2-bladed prop, then it had a metal prop, then it had a variable pitch prop, and then it had a three-bladed prop, then it had a four-bladed prop, and then, you know, so it goes on. What appeared to be minor differences, but it was all about the rate of development forced by the ravages of war. At the time we managed to keep secret, one of which was that we started using a higher grade octane for the petrol that the aircraft were using, and it went up to 100 and then up to 150 octane, and the extra 20 miles per hour that it generated was really, really useful, and the Germans took a while to work out that that's what we were actually doing.
Display, what you were just describing, the necessity of development due to the ravages of combat, is best depicted by the one in the middle, the Mark 9. I say that because the Mark 9 was originally an interim measure designed to counter the menace of the Luftwaffe's new Focke-Wulf FW-190 fighter, which came as quite a shock when it first appeared in 1942. It went on to become the most numerous of all Marks. Initially they were converted from the earlier Mark 5s, but they went on to be produced new. They were equipped with a two-stage supercharger, which provided an enormous boost to performance, particularly above 20,000 feet. And it was also one of the most popular Marks, I think, with the pilots, the Mark 9.
Yes, that's certainly true. It was seen as the all-round, the real deal for that period that you've just described.
It's interesting that the first in-service Mark of Griffon-engined Spitfire, the Mark 12, of which hopefully in future years we should see an airworthy example taking to the skies once again in the UK, entered service around the same time, not much later than the Mark 9, in October 1942, and it was the first Griffon-engined Mark 12s that introduced the clipped wings for better low-altitude performance, proving particularly useful in the chase after V-1 flying bombs. The Mark 14, really the first large-scale Griffon-engined production variant, seeing a great deal of service in the Western European theatre, notably in the later part of World War II. There is, of course, the very interesting statistic I think we mentioned earlier, if I remember rightly, about the power produced by the different engines. The contrast here between the 1,030 horsepower in the Merlin in the Mark 1, as I say, a very early Merlin, the Mark being fitted with the Merlin 3 engine. But then, of course, we go up to in excess of 2,030 horsepower in the Mark 14 with its Griffon 65 engine. And the improvement in maximum speed also tells its own story. 367 miles an hour for the Mark 1, 449 miles an hour for the Mark 14. Into land, we have the Mark 1A of IWM, which was flown by Dave Ratcliffe. We have the Mark 9 of Aero Legends in the hands of Charlie Brown, and they're followed by the Mark 14, the Griffon-engined clipped-wing aircraft from Anglia Aircraft Restorations, painted as the personal aeroplane of that great fighter ace, Johnny Johnson. And there it is, about to touch down on the hard runway with Mark Levy at the controls. But now we turn our attention to the great workhorse of the Battle of Britain in, from the left, a four-ship formation of Hawker Hurricanes.
¿Dónde están? Ya. Hay una mariposa que
Spitfire opening, Battle of Britain Memorial on 30. So anytime soon. Airfield attack, fire techniques at 2:30. Historic helicopters, Great War display team, pyrotechnics, that's the little white planes, all these little guys. And as we came past that on the gate, I said, these are guys on white planes. I said, yeah, they do. He said, perfect boys toy plane. Yeah, so I think I had probably most of those hanging on my bedroom ceiling as a kid. It's like finally those, but they do look like fun. Spitfire from the Area 5 and then the NHS Spitfire. 25 minutes.